Welcome back to the Charismatic Voice. Today's video is going to be an analysis and comparison of the song Popular from Wicked. This is not a first-time reaction, not by a large margin. I've seen the musical, I've seen the film, I even auditioned with this song for years. So rather, this is going to be a deep dive looking into the original Glinda, Kristin Chenoweth, and how Ariana Grande took on the role, and specifically how they tackled this song. Let's get to it.
You're gonna be popular. I'll teach you the proper poise when you talk to boys. Little ways to flirt and glance. Ooh, I'll show you what shoes to wear, how to fix that hair. Everything that really counts to be popular. I'll help you be popular. You'll hang with the right cohorts. You'll be good at sports. Know the slang you've got to know. So let's start, 'cause you've got an awfully long way to go.
So we've actually started halfway through the song. We've started when the main theme starts going here. This was not the beginning of the song. We're going to go back and analyze recordings from both the movie and the film version. But I wanted to start here because this is the original cast performing Wicked. And I think it's so important when we're examining Glinda, or Glinda as she later becomes, we have to know where this came from. And Kristin Chenoweth actually helped develop the role alongside Stephen Schwartz, the composer. This is really important. When you're working hand in hand with a composer as it's being written, that role can be molded into a singer's voice and personality. It's an amazing and very gratifying opportunity. Keep in mind, right, this comes from a book, and that book actually had quite a few big shifts when it was shifted into the musical. And then, of course, musical shifting into film. I know Stephen Schwartz was still involved with this. And the same person, gosh, what was her name? The same person did the screenplay for the film and for the musical, Winnie Holtzman. So just keep that in mind for continuity's sake. We're going to go back and talk about some of the styling that Kristin Chenoweth essentially created for this role.
You're gonna be popular. I'll teach you the proper poise when you talk to boys. Little ways to flirt and glance. Ooh, I'll show you what shoes to wear, how to fix that hair. Everything that really counts to be popular. I'll help you be popular. You'll hang with the right cohorts. You'll be good at sports. Know the slang you've got to know. So let's start, 'cause you've got an awfully long way to go.
So, first of all, Kristin Chenoweth is just so bubbly and infectious as Glinda. Like, you can't help but love and hate her at the same time, which is pretty fantastic because Glinda's role here is kind of the villain, right? She has good intentions sometimes, and they tend to turn out bad still quite often. But essentially, she's being put up as a comparison to Elphaba, who really, really is the hero of our story. The Wicked Witch is the hero. So I think it's important that when you get this character, Glinda, she has to be bubbly and fun and blonde, and she has to have elements of her that make you like her, but also make you hate her and the way she treats Elphaba. Some of the little things she brings in here into the vocalizations are super important in designing that.
You're gonna be popular. I'll teach you the proper poise when you talk to boys. Little ways to flirt and glance. Ooh, I'll show you what shoes.
Like that. She adds all of these little bits, moments. I've seen so many versions of Popular and how people shift it to be their own thing. Some people take these little interjections over the top, like crazy. It can feel a little bit overwhelming, which actually I think is probably a good thing with Glinda. She is a little bit overwhelming in how blonde she really is. Additionally, this role, despite it having some incredible soaring high notes, this song is actually fairly low. It's not the lowest song in the musical, right? Elphaba has that. I'm Not That Girl, I think is her lowest pitch-wise song. And uh, but it's important to realize that Popular actually sits pretty low in a female's voice, and it doesn't have super high belty moments, not like Alphaba. Instead, it's like it needs a lot of focus on the sound. Kristin Chenoweth is coming from this background of legit singing. She studied musical theater, yes, but she also got a master's degree in opera. And she even had the opportunity to pursue opera as her career, but she started her career in musical theater instead. Great decision on her end. She continues to have one of those voices in musical theater that's just, it feels like there's no cap to her high notes. We've seen her perform songs like the girl from 14G, I think, just tons of different roles that have this truly legit, meaning more classical style of singing. So Glinda was written for her with these high notes in mind. I think there's a high C in there at one point, maybe it's a high B. But this main song that she has in the first act actually sits quite low. And Kristin Chenoweth makes it work because of how pointed and focused she keeps the sound.
I'll teach you the proper poise when you talk to boys, little ways to flirt and flounce. Ooh, I'll show you what shoes to wear, how to fix that hair. Everything that really counts to be popular.
So she's still in a very light vocal mechanism when we're talking about her vocal register here. She's keeping it super light, which makes sense for a Glinda, right? This is not going to be super belty, though there are belted moments required. Instead, she has often a very light mechanism going on that has a lot of nasality on it, a point on the sound. It helps keep clarity. It helps her sound a little bit snotty as well. And I think that it's important to keep in mind how Kristin Chenoweth makes Glinda sound a little bit snotty and bratty, and we'll compare that later to what Ariana Grande has done with the role. Let's keep going for now.
Everything that really counts to be popular. I'll help you be popular. You'll hang with the right cohorts. You'll be good at sports. Know the slang you've got to know. So let's start, because you've got
That was a good belted moment.
way to go.
That part always cracks me up because Kristin Chenoweth has this like hilarious ability to make notes go a little bit off pitch, become a little undersupported, go towards speech just a bit, especially for humor's sake. She does that so well throughout the role of Glinda.
Because you've got an awfully long way to go. Don't be offended by my frank analysis. Think of it as personality dialysis. Now that I've chosen to become a publicist or an advisor, there's nobody wiser, not when it comes to popular.
Couple really key important things in here. One of them, notice still the incredible forward focus. I mentioned earlier that I actually brought this to auditions for a long time. I'm an opera singer. I'm not a musical theater singer. Okay, that was never my goal. Opera is my background. And this is what we consider a crossover audition piece. So if I was doing some sort of audition for something like Leonard Bernstein, especially, is a good example, where you're going to have this mix between musical theater and opera. This is a song I would bring. Every opera singer needs to have at least one crossover song ready for auditions, hopefully a few. I also used Summertime a lot from Porgy and Bess. There are several, though, crossover works of art, shall we say, that are not exactly musical theater, not exactly opera, and require this kind of song for audition. And the way that I would go from opera to popular is by taking the sound and going and sticking it in the front of my face. It's like, let's get a lot of nasality to it. You get nasal, you get lighter in the mechanism at the same time. It becomes all very focused. I wouldn't really worry too much, honestly, about register shifts in the song because it's written so well for a legit voice to have natural register shifts. I can talk about that a little bit more later, but just bringing it crazy far forward and losing the dome in the back of the sound is the way that I transferred from opera to popular. The other thing that's really cool here that she adds as a little contemporary extra bit is actually this growl. And I think it's interesting to note where she put it because Ariana brought it in a couple other places in her interpretation.
To become a palace sister and advisor, there's nobody
Right there.
wiser, not when it comes to popular.
I think that's super important. I also think that's a really important technique for musical theater singers, especially to know that's not hurting her vocal folds, you guys. That was this misconception that people had for a long time. And now that we're doing actual research into how growls and screams are created, I know that this sound is very sustainable, doesn't hurt. In fact, it might actually be helpful for singers of all types to learn how to do this and control that pharyngeal space a little bit better.
Personality dialysis. Now that I've chosen to
It's still
become
here.
a palace sister and advisor, there's nobody wiser, not when it comes to popular. I know about popular, and with an assist from me to be who you'll be instead of dreary who you were, well, are. There's nothing that can stop you from.
I love that moment. So perfectly written. This embodiment of the character, I think, is extremely important to recognize. And wow, did Ariana Grande pull this off incredibly well in the film. Glinda has so much ambition and drive. And I love the way that this is brought into this moment in the song and the way that Kristin Chenoweth looks up like she's being called to something higher.
All about popular, and with an assist.
Oh, let's go back a little further.
Sister and advisor, there's nobody wiser, not when it comes to popular. I know about popular, and with an assist from me to be who you'll be.
This is a driven lady.
Well, there's nothing that can stop you from becoming popular. Lar, la.
Popular lar. Because we're going to be examining the audio soundtracks later, I want to just speak briefly to this moment in the film. A lot of things in the film were really drawn out, right? The original Act 1 from Wicked is about an hour and a half long. The first film, which is encompassing Act 1, first film was 2 hours and 40 minutes, I believe. Whoa. That is some serious drawing out. Some of it I really, really liked. Some of it I felt was bloat, just as an aside. But overall, I thought the film was extremely well adapted. Congratulations, everybody there. This popular lar moment was so well done. I think that the acting was on point. The vocal timbre was on point. I love the way that the film was able to capture details or angles that you wouldn't get in a theater, right? With a theater, you've just got this one view. Instead, we have all of these extra ways we could expand on the character and key moments like this where the character suddenly gets confused about how to pronounce popular. Just cracks me up. Anyhow, it was one of my favorite moments actually in the film because I thought it captured this humor so perfectly.
Instead of dreary who you were, well, there's nothing that can stop you from becoming popular. Lar, la, la, la. We're gonna make you popular.
Kristin Chenoweth is a master of humor on the musical theater stage. I, though, often like that part actually to be sung out by Glinda's, but for her, I think that this was the most amazing decision because everybody knows that she can sing the socks off of any song, and the sort of like I'm cute and I'm dancing moment worked extremely, extremely well. It's fascinating. I think that Glinda's can do this particular moment in several different ways and be really effective, and it tells you that the writing's really good.
Lar, la, la, la. We're gonna make you popular. When I see the
Also, sorry, there's so many little details in here that they actually brought into the film extremely, extremely well. And a lot of those are in the moments in the way that Kristin Chenoweth glances to the audience. I think that the directors and Ariana Grande collaborated extremely well, and how she essentially is always performing for someone. Always. Glinda is always doing that. And Kristin Chenoweth helped design that. And then that was, I think, brought to life even more by the film.
Popular.
She's like, hey, look at me dance.
When I see depressing creatures with unprepossessing features, I remind them on their own behalf to think of celebrated heads of state or specially great communicators. Did they have brains or knowledge? Don't make me laugh. They were popular.
All right, we're going to go back to that one moment before we move on. I think it's important to consider the drive behind the sound that Kristin Chenoweth has, and really the cleanliness that she's coming together with the chords. She's nailing each of those notes just dead on. And this is a live performance, right? We don't have all the fussing and stuff that you can hear in the studio albums. I would be curious to see Ariana Grande perform this role on a stage like this, because it's just a different beast. It's not saying that they aren't similar beasts, but it's still a different beast performing on a stage like this night after night after night after night, and having that kind of drive and specificity on the note, and also fantastic rhythm. I think Ariana's very up to it. I'd be curious though how the tone would differ, particularly in this part, because Kristin Chenoweth's tone is so gathered. It's very laser. Again, so much nasality. But there's also this sparkle on it, and it doesn't have nearly as much fluff as Ariana Grande's version, which we'll get to in just a moment. Let's let this play out, and then we'll switch over.
Heads of state or specially great communicators, did they have brains or knowledge? Don't make me laugh. They were popular. Please. It's all about popular. It's not about
I should mention right before, I love the way the popular goes over a break so that it allows the singer to actually do a little yodel there. Such a fun way of writing that.
Please. It's all about popular.
Right there.
It's not
You
about
can lean into your break
aptitude.
and make it
It's the
funny.
way you're viewed, so it's very shrewd to be very, very popular. Like
Same thing.
me.
Written
This
for a
is
little
never going
break.
to work.
Next version. Let's dig into the soundtrack version now that has Ariana Grande singing this role.
Elfie, now that we're friends, I've decided to make you my new project.
Oh, you really don't have to do that.
I know. That's what makes me so nice. Whenever I see someone less fortunate than I, and let's face it, right, who isn't? Less fortunate than I, my tender heart tends to start to bleed. And when someone needs a makeover, I simply have to take over. I know exactly what they need.
So we're in the actual intro of the song, sung by Ariana Grande this time. And there's a few key differences here. But the first major thing I want to point out is how much more fluffy is the way I'd put it, Ariana's voice is compared to Kristin Chenoweth's. This was pervasive in the entire film. We have a lot of, it's almost like down feathers for Ariana's voice that we get. And it doesn't have the like icy nasality that the snotty edge of Kristin Chenoweth's voice will bring in, but instead it almost has this like slightly aloof, almost more blonde tone at times. And I think it actually worked extremely well for Ariana. It felt a little bit more her rather than trying to just copy Kristen, even though she's taken so much inspiration. I have to say that I was a little taken aback every now and then by some of the R&B runs that were brought into the film, but I respect the decision of the artist to bring that kind of elaboration into the score. And that's because this is a different version from what we saw in 2003. This should be more contemporary. It should bring in elements that have evolved in music since then. And Ariana Grande has lots of runs out the wazoo and stylization that's going to be different from Kristin Chenoweth. So we want her version of Glinda here. Even though sometimes it took me out of the character when I heard those runs, I was taken out for a moment and then I had a little nod of like, okay, it's good for you to put your style on this. Let's go back to the beginning. There are a few other things to mention in here, and then we'll compare just this section with the soundtrack of Kristin Chenoweth.
Now that we're friends, I've decided to make you my new project.
Oh, you really don't have to do that.
I know. That's what makes me so nice. Whenever I see someone less fortunate than I, and let's face it, right, who isn't? Less fortunate than I, my tender heart tends to start to bleed. And when someone needs a makeover, I simply have to take over. I know exactly what they need.
All right, let's hop over to Kristin Chenoweth singing the same thing.
Elfie, now that we're friends, I've decided to make you my new project.
You really don't have to do that.
I know. That's what makes me so nice. Whenever I see someone less fortunate than I, and let's face it, who isn't? Less fortunate than I, my tender heart tends to start to bleed. And when someone needs a makeover, I simply have to take over. I know exactly what they need.
So I think it's very interesting that we heard this growl from Kristin Chenoweth in the first clip, in the live clip, later in the song. The exact same vocal technique was used by Ariana Grande in this first section. Have to take over is where she brings it in the half. Kristin Chenoweth, though, doesn't do it in her version. It's like Ariana was nodding to Kristin Chenoweth and using a little mannerism of this character that had been brought in, but said, oh, I think I really want to put it in this spot. I also think that the overall timing is really interesting. Check out this original soundtrack for Wicked by the originating cast. It's 3 minutes and 45 seconds long, and the original soundtrack from the film is 4 minutes and 1 second long. This actually is a fairly conservative example from the film of how things were extended. A lot of the musical numbers were really, really extended in the film version. This one just has a little bit more space in a few places. I think that, let's see, so really it's just been maybe a couple more seconds that Ariana Grande has taken at this point compared to Kristin Chenoweth. And that's more about the pacing. So I simply have to take over. There's sort of this fun run-on pacing that feels like Kristin Chenoweth is just so excited to popularized Elphaba. But it isn't brought into Ariana's version as much. Let's check this out one more time. Particularly notice the condensed tone that Kristen has and the fluffy tone that Ariana has.
Now that we're friends, I've decided to make you my new project.
You really don't have to do that.
I know. That's what makes me so nice.
Her speaking voice sits higher than Ariana's too.
Whenever I see someone less fortunate than I, and let's face it, who isn't? Less fortunate than I, my tender heart tends to start to bleed. And when someone needs a makeover, I simply
That's the
have
part
to
that's
take
like
over.
running
I know
forward.
exactly what they need.
I'll let it keep playing.
And even in your case, though it's the toughest case I've yet to face, don't worry, I'm determined to succeed. Follow my lead, and yes, indeed, you will be.
And by the way, right there where I pause it, that's where the first clip we started. That's where it begins. Back to this one more time.
Elfie, now that we're friends, I've decided to make you my new project.
Oh, you really don't have to do that.
I know.
I like the way this
what
fundamentally
makes me so
feels more
nice.
Ariana while still being Glinda. There's a good mix.
Whenever I see someone less fortunate than I, and let's face it, right? Who isn't?
Face
Less
it,
fortunate
right.
than I. My tender heart tends to start to bleed. And when someone needs a makeover, I simply have to take over. I know.
There's a little
I
run, but
know
not as much as Kristin Chenoweth there.
exactly what they need. And even in your case, though it's the toughest case I've yet to face, don't
I was honestly really surprised by this moment because we usually expect the singer to be kind of over the top at this point about how tough the case is to take on. Ariana instead actually made it more sensitive and vulnerable. And I think that choice further strengthened this key moment in the plot, which is the development of the friendship between Glinda and Elphaba. This is when, really in the film, it was a little bit before this in the dialogue, but this is when the friendship is blossoming, even though Elphaba could care less about wearing pink shoes or a flower. This is still that it's actually a very, very sweet moment, even though it's wrapped in humor and a little bit of barf. But I think that Ariana's choice to do the toughest case as instead just a little bit more sensitive, I think it was really, really sweet. Very surprising.
And even in your case, though it's the toughest case I've yet to face, don't worry, I'm determined to succeed. Follow my lead.
It's a nice mix.
Yes, indeed, you will be.
I think that there's a threading of the sound on You Will Be in Ariana's voice that is so similar to Kristin Chenoweth's. You have to be careful at that point. It's going lower in the female's voice. Keep in mind what, I'm not sure how low Kristin Chenoweth goes. I think her range extends a little bit lower than Ariana Grande's, even though I think she typically sits a little bit higher in a lot of the stuff she sings. Both women have essentially, I would describe them as coloratura sopranos. They sit the highest that a female voice really can sit. Their lows are not going to be as strong. And so in this part, you need to keep the timbre of having a higher register of the voice. It can't be too thick. It has to be kind of light, but it still has to have cut. And so the trick to it is to funnel thread the resonance of the sound. It feels like all of this sound that's been created right here, it goes up through your vocal tract. And there's so many little adjustments that we can make inside where you can direct the sound towards your eyes, out the crown of your head. And there are all kinds of sensations and feedback that people will get saying like, oh, I feel like my voice is coming out of my teeth, right? These sensations are extremely important for helping keep continuity in the sound and helping make sure that the sound continues to have presence, in this case, when the singer is going down low without going into a beefy lower register. So there's both nasality and almost this feeling for me when I would sing it of having like the front canines have a little bit of buzz. And both Kristin Chenoweth and Ariana Grande do the same type of threading.
You will
Right here.
be popular.
I love that, Gus.
You're gonna be popular. I'll teach you the proper ploys when you talk to boys. The ways to flirt and flounce. I'll show you what shoes to wear, how to fix your hair. Everything that really counts to be popular.
She added a little more growl there
I'll
again.
help you be popular. You'll hang with the right cohorts. You'll be good at sports. Know the slang you've got to know. So let's start, 'cause you've got an awfully long way to go. Don't be a
because I'd done this at auditions so many times, when we got to this point, I just got so annoyed and then had to put pause on my conceptions and be like, no, 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 no. I understand why she did that. That was an artistic choice that she was allowed to make and put her spin on the song. But there's some extra music that was added right there from the original clip. And so I was like, no, the timing's off. But it's, she got to choose to do something a little bit different. It's just vamping in the music pretty much at this point. So no big deal. Awfully long way to go. That's the part I'm talking about. She actually makes it longer in her version. I want to go over to Kristin Chenoweth here now. Check out a couple differences.
Popular, you're gonna be popular. I'll teach you the proper poise when you talk to boys. Little ways to flirt and flounce. Ooh, I'll show you what shoes to wear, how to fix your hair. Everything that really counts to be popular. I'll help you be popular. You'll hang with the right cohorts. You'll be good at sports. Know the slang you've got to know. So let's start, 'cause you've got an awfully long way to go. Don't be offended by...
So if you're a keen listener, you will have noticed the difference in the timing between those two. But the most obvious difference continues to be this essential tonal, timbral quality that is actually quite different between the two voices. Kristin Chenoweth just has more focus on her sound. She has, if I were to look at this in a spectrogram, which is a way of visualizing different sound, I would see a much brighter line indicating both the pitch that's being sung and the overtones from it. In Ariana Grande's, I would see more fuzz that is indicating the air and the fluffiness we hear in the tone. Neither of these timbres are incorrect or wrong. So let's be really clear on that. That's a preference. One might be better suited to film and studio, and one might be better suited to musical theater, Broadway stages. I would say that with Kristin Chenoweth, having that kind of focus on the sound and really efficiency especially, that's going to help the night after night after night performance give her a continual cut on the Broadway stage. With Ariana Grande, she doesn't have to perform this 8 times a week. I mean, I know that preparing for the film was grueling, but for years and years and years and years, she doesn't have to do that. Instead, she has to do tours and other things. Better to keep her voice in shape for the regular music that she sings. She's brought in this fluffiness that works actually so well, I think, for a film version, because it gives that, it has like the hair flip incorporated in her sound. And I don't know that that would be really great on a Broadway stage. I think it might feel a little tiring after a while. But she wasn't doing it for a Broadway stage. She was doing it for film. So it actually gave a different dimension to the character that I found fascinating. 2 different choices, both super valid and great in my opinion. Let's keep going for now.
My frank analysis, think of it as personality dialysis. Now that I've chosen to become a palace sister and advisor, there's nobody wiser, not when it comes
I
to
missed the growl on that one.
I know about popular, and with an assist from me to be who you'll be, instead of dreary who you were, well, are. There's nothing that can stop you from becoming popular.
Okay, we're going to go back here. I'm actually going to see if I can start us at the first intro to this section.
You
Perfect.
will be popular. You're gonna be popular. I'll teach you the...
I love one thing in that little bit, and I hate one thing in that little bit. I love the gasp. The little yodel doesn't work as well here. I don't know if that's Ariana's voice or the production of it. This soundtrack, I think every now and then, to me, it felt just a little overproduced, just a tiny bit, where I felt like I just lost a little bit of the raw quality of a singer's voice. And It's in moments like this where I felt like the yodel, there is a natural break that would happen there. And I know from working in a lot of production software that that natural break, the little yodel that happens in Kristin Chenoweth, and almost every person that's going to audition with this song will lean into that little yodel there. Yodel meaning it switching from a lower register to a higher register, and there's a little break that we hear, right? That break is not something that editing software is friendly to. It tends to fuzz it, try to cover it up. Sometimes it just like splats and sounds terrible. Sometimes you kind of can nudge it. I feel like we actually lost it a little bit here. The gasp is adorable. And then I was like, oh, that yodel. I feel like that could have been better.
Will be popular. You're gonna be popular. I'll teach you the
It feels like it got a little over melodined, if you know what I mean.
popular. You're gonna be popular. I'll teach you
One more time.
popular. You're gonna be popular. I'll teach you the proper.
So moments like that make me honestly just kind of a little bit disheartened because I want my musicals. I think that some of the production in modern musicals set into film have a little too much, just too heavy of a hand. I understand sometimes you're working with singers who aren't really singers, so or like maybe they're actors who are trying out a singing role. Maybe they've done a little bit of singing, but they're not really like musical theater singers or incredible pop stars. Ariana Grande has an amazing voice, and Cynthia has like world-class Broadway theater voice. I just don't know why they needed as much production. I think it could have been lightened up a little bit, and that's one of the criticisms I had in general of the film. But I think that it's really difficult to balance a musical theater sound with a film sound. There are two different skills designed for two different medium. So while I might be critical of that, I don't know what I would do in that situation. And I still have a lot of respect to the people that did this because overall, it was very, very good. We'll keep going.
Please, when you talk to boys, the ways to flirt and flirts. I'll show you what shoes to wear, how to fix your hair, everything that really counts to be popular. I'll help you be popular. You'll hang with the right cohorts. You'll be good at sports. Know the slang you've got to know.
Just going to pull it back to that other popular point. This one was more effective. I think it was better done.
Be popular. I'll help you be popular. You'll hang with the
It still feels just a little bit funky to me though.
popular. I'll help you be popular. You'll hang with the right cohorts. You'll be good at sports. Know the slang you've got to know. So let's start, cause you've got an awfully long way to go.
Extended version.
Don't be offended by my frank analysis. Think of it as personality dialysis. Now that I've chosen to become a palace sister and advisor, there's nobody wiser. Not when it comes to popular. I know about popular, and with an assist from me to be who you'll be instead of dreary who you were. Well, there's nothing that can stop you from becoming popular. Lar.
So part of what made that so effective in this version was actually having a little more silence between it. Again, super well done in the film. I think that Kristin Chenoweth's version gets a little bit more snotty in the rapid section. Don't be offended by my frank analysis. Think of it as personality dialysis. By the way, wow, the words, the text of this entire musical is just so good. Certain vowels aren't always set on the best pitches. Poor Elphaba having to belt some high notes on an E vowel. But this whole part, once you learn it, it's really, really, really fun to perform, right? The inner rhymes and the rhythm are just great. So I think Kristen gets a little snottier, gets a little more focused in that part. And Ariana's kind of a little bit more light and aloof again. I guess I have a little bit of a preference towards Kristen, but I think that both work. Let's keep going.
Lar. La, 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 la. We're gonna make you popular.
I just want to compare that. Let's see, maybe here.
Who you were, well, are. There's nothing that can stop you from becoming popular.
Compare the orchestration here.
Lar. La, 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 la. We're gonna make you popular.
I was really impressed with how they took the score and made it feel more grand for the film. It really, they thickened up certain parts. I think they doubled some instruments. It felt very true to the musical, but it felt like it was on a grander scape, more epic.
There's nothing that can stop you from becoming popular. Lar. La, la,
Like there's a lot more bass in this, a lot more spaciousness too. It was a really good shift.
When I see depressing creatures with unprepossessing features, I remind them on their own behalf to think of celebrated heads of state or especially great communicators. Did they have brains or knowledge? Don't make me laugh. They were
Popular.
right. It's all about
I did appreciate that back and forth in this one versus the original. We'll go back to Kristin Chenoweth. But notice particularly, I think that Kristin Chenoweth's voice just actually has an ability to drive a little bit more on this section. Ariana still does drive more, and since she's coming from a much more fluffy timbre, she doesn't have to drive as much to create that contrast. But there's something like a little more nailed in here.
When I see depressing creatures with unprepossessing features, I remind them on their own to think of celebrated heads of state or especially great communicators. Did they have brains or knowledge? Don't make me laugh. They were popular. Please, it's all about popular.
In case y'all have only seen the video, that exchange, that popular, is in the video version. Elphaba is the one that's like, yeah, I got it. That they were popular. Got it. I thought that was kind of a brilliant shift. It was just a little one, but it showed that Elphaba was part of a conversation still. Like it's a conversation that's dominated by Galinda, but she's still there for it. A lot of times people think of big solo moments as it's the singer just singing out to the audience. And really, one of the most important things to remember is whether or not that song is being directed towards the audience or maybe towards another person on stage. I think about moments like the Queen of the Nights aria, right? That's that huge Mozart aria that so many people are obsessed with, tons of high notes. It's like bouncing back and forth, just epic, epic aria. And a lot of times people think about that being directed to the audience when actually that is the queen abusively telling her daughter that that daughter needs to go and kill her father. Like when you take that and you twist it and you're like, oh, this is the context. Whoa, that's totally different. This song would not be the same if Galinda was just talking about the audience and kind of nudging them, like, yeah, I'm going to make you popular. No, instead, it's actually about the relationship between Galinda and Elphaba developing. And I like that this moment in the film made it so Elphaba was still a part of the conversation. I thought it was kind of brilliant.
of celebrated heads of state or especially great communicators. Did they have brains or knowledge? Don't make me laugh. They were
Popular.
right. It's all about popular. It's It's not about aptitude, it's the way you're viewed. So it's very sure to be very, very popular, like me.
I loved that little run that she added in there. And there's actually a couple other moments earlier where she slightly changed pitches to make it hers. I thought it's been pretty tasteful, honestly. I was like, whoa, nice, nice. Also, I just realized there's something about Glinda that reminds me of, what's her name in The Princess and the Frog? Not Tiana. Tiana's the main one, but there's the like really spoiled girl who often does that particular kind of growl, and she's like on a prince hunt. Gosh, if you guys remember the name of that character, let me know in the comments below. Gosh, maybe my video editors will help me out here and provide a character with a name below. That way you can get that sort of sonic and also visual imprint. I think that that character might have even been influenced by Kristin Chenoweth's Glinda because of the particular vocal mannerisms. Let's keep going.
Be very, very popular, like me. And though you protest.
Just so y'all remember, there's an exchange here that happens in both film and musical that is Elphaba essentially saying like, no, I really don't want this. I've got to leave. And in both versions, I think it's done very well. Different, but well done.
And though you protest your disinterest, I know clandestiny.
So delicate.
You're gonna grin and bear it, your newfound popularity. La, 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 la,
Extended.
la, la, la. You'll be popular, just not quite as popular as me.
Okay, we're gonna go back to the original version here, and I'm curious if you'll have the same reaction I had when comparing these two at first. There's a huge difference.
It's not about aptitude, it's the way you're viewed, so it's very shrewd to be very, very popular, like me. Why, Miss Elphaba, look at you.
Oh, so they actually include this in the soundtrack version here, whereas they didn't with the movie version.
I have to go.
That moment is more
You're
drawn
welcome.
out in the film as well.
And though you protest your disinterest, I know clandestinely. You're gonna grin and bear it, your newfound popularity. La, 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 la. You'll be popular, just not quite as popular as me.
So the endings of these two versions are very different. It's almost like we got an elaborated cadenza, essentially, in Ariana's version. You have key changes. She's extending it so she gets a lot more high notes. I'm still not exactly sure how I feel about the extended version. And I think it's partly because I'm so enveloped in what the original version did. And I think, especially with musicals, you don't want things to get too drawn out. I think you have a little more wiggle room in films. With musicals, things need to be pretty sharp and snappy. You need to really keep the audience there with you all the time. The moment you've lost them, it's a really big issue. In a theater, I feel like you can recapture them a little bit more easily. In This case, though, the thing that I found considerably better in the film version is how luscious the orchestra becomes. I really think that the reorchestrated version here is superior. I'm still not sure about how I feel with the extended key changes, big long exit here, but wow, don't the instruments sound good? Like it sounds more magical.
You're gonna grin and bear it. Your newfound popularity.
I think the brass is really well done. I also like that high scream. It's just so lush here.
You'll be popular.
That moment when she goes up high with a still pretty full sound, that was one of those moments where I thought, wow, okay. I feel like if Ariana wanted to go the direction of classical opera singing, she could. Yeah, she's got high notes out the wazoo. Like she could sing all kinds of high rolls there. But sometimes I've thought, oh, the styling is just, I don't know how she would do with styling. I've heard her copy tons of styles, and I think she's got to be one of the most versatile vocalists out there. But I never know if she could really go full to opera. But there's a moment in there where she sounds actually a little bit like Natalie Dessay to me. If you're opera nerds, you know who that is. French coloratura soprano, very, very famous. And I thought, oh, okay. Like I could hear Ariana potentially taking on something like Lucia. Just there's a possibility there. Or even something like The Doll. It's a very impressive moment. Right here.
You'll be popular. Just not quite as popular as me.
I love the orchestra. I have a few big takeaways from this comparison that I want to share. First, I think it's really impressive how both women have put a stamp on this character. I think that Kristin Chenoweth helped develop it in the first place, really set the golden standard. Ariana Grande couldn't get too far from that without really getting away from what the character was designed to be. Yet, she made it her own. She brings that aloofness, that airiness, that essentially hair flip that's encompassed in her vocal timbre. And I think that she takes Galinda and makes it her own and is able to even adapt it super successfully into the film medium. My other huge takeaway is that I think the orchestration and how it's shifted for this film medium is glorious. I think that they've filled the whole sound out beautifully. Yeah, at times I feel that sometimes it can be a little too extended. Did the first video need to be 2 hours and 40 minutes instead of an hour and a half? I'm not sure. I felt like there was a little bit of bloat there. But I think that overall, the expanse of this musical, even just using the song as an example, the expanse of it into film medium worked extremely, extremely well. And if you want to see another analysis, I don't know which one I'm going to post first, if it's going to be this one or Defying Gravity. But if you want to see another analysis of Wicked, check out this analysis over here. I'll put some other things on a playlist for you. May you fall more in love with music every day. Oh, we'll add some other Kristin Chenoweth to that. Let's do Curl in 14G2. Okay.